Blog Talk Radio.
Hey guys, this is Those Guys with your host, Matt Marrero, along with the other host.
Mothra. God damn it.
I was doing that to him before the show began, but it was so brief and so quick, it freaked him out, and then it was the omnipotent voice that says, "Hey, countdown, 5 seconds," came on, and he just got freaked out. So I just freaked out Tristan, everyone. Anyway, so today we're doing the original 1961 Mothra, and I'm actually really happy about this movie. More happy than Tristan is, I think. Like, Tristan, how do you feel about this movie? Because I don't think you're as hyped as I am, Tristan.
No, I mean, it's not a bad movie, and like in no sense was it a bad movie. Like, you know, compared to the other monster movies. I liked it. It's just, I don't know, Mothra doesn't really do it for me as much as Godzilla.
Well, here's the thing, right? Obviously, yes. Well, my thing is, look, obviously Mothra is not Godzilla. Like, no shit, right? We all get that. Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of Mothra's design only because I don't know, I haven't seen any movies where Mothra has fought Godzilla as far as I remember, right? So maybe, just maybe, it'll look amazing when they actually fight, right? But personally, I just feel like it's a hard fight to try and sell me on, you know?
Yeah,
like that's what I'll say about it. Like, it's a hard fight. Yeah,
it's been a while, but like they give. All I remember is just as a kid watching it with my dad. Like, they kind of give Mothra some bullshit like excuses as to why it's beating back Godzilla.
No, that's fine. I'm sure. No, I'm sure it got. You know, like again, you know, we look at we look at King Kong versus Godzilla as we did. And, you know, obviously there were some reasons why King Kong worked in that setting as well. So, like, don't worry. I'm not, you know, I'm just trying to say that, like, you know, even though we're not talking about Mothra versus Godzilla right now, I feel a little awkward about that future fight. But in the moment when we're talking about just Mothra, I don't know. The reason why I think I'm really happy about this movie is because I'm not going to say that's better than every movie, like, Godzilla-wise or Toho-wise that we've done so far, because that's weird. Even compared to, like, King Kong, I don't want to say that it's a better movie compared to that because, I mean, in ways, this is pretty much a King Kong adaptation. So it'd be weird to say this is better than King Kong. But the reason why I'm very happy about this film, and you're going to hear me gush about it, is because I was happy that we got away from the formulaic, oh, we're married or we're about to get married, we're in love, romance stuff. I'm not saying romance can't happen in a movie, but it kind of felt like there was the same formula going on with, you know, Godzilla films, and I just didn't want it anymore. After 3 of them, I was like, can we just move away from that? And thankfully, because this isn't a Godzilla film, they did just that. So we have no romance to kind of clutter up the film. Then they give us a good, like a really good bad guy. When I say good bad guy, I mean someone that we don't have to sit there and try to relate to or hear about his tragic backstory. We just fucking hate Nelson. And I feel like, obviously, yes, the monster is supposed to be the bad one, and in many of these, you know, in the Godzilla movies, they, at least at first, try to have the humans be decent people getting hurt by this giant monster, and that's the main villain. And I get that. But it just felt weird that we haven't really had any bad guys in the Godzilla universe other than the monsters themselves so far, you know, from all the podcasts we've done. So when you look at Mothra, it's nice to just have I don't know, like the monster doesn't even have to be good because technically even though Mothra's trying to save the two women, the two, like, fairies, if you will, still, Mothra's going to destroy the city to do it. So Mothra isn't the nicest, right? You know, but still, I do like that we can hate Nelson so much and that we can look at a character like Nelson and just go, fuck you, I hate your guts, and kind of rally behind the good guys against Nelson.
I find it funny that Mothra wasn't... Yeah, like Mothra wasn't the one to finish off Nelson. It was just the armed guards of this other country that they were in to try to escape to. It's like, we just straight up shot him.
Yeah, they were in his home country.
Oh yeah. And I mean, he threatened to shoot people in a public place too. So it was like, nope, taking you down. Well,
and I liked that a lot because I don't know. I felt like at that point in the movie too, it just became like a one of your standard gangster movies, and I feel like that's something I really haven't seen in Japanese cinema. Not saying that I've seen so much of it, but I feel like that isn't really shown as much. It's mostly when you like in older American movies, it'd be like, yeah, see, we got away with the heist, see. So being able to see that here and just having all three of them just doing that evil villain laugh, just another heist well done. Like, I just sat there and I was like, this is beautiful because I can't wait till you die. Like,
right.
I feel like because here's the thing, right? I know I said when we did Godzilla Raids Again, we shouldn't have criminals here because it kind of feels like, especially like running away, because it feels like it negates the destruction of Godzilla because you want to be able to go, no, Godzilla's destruction and weep and for these people, and then they show these criminals who we don't even know what they've done. Granted they killed the guards before leaving before trying to escape, but still it was just weird that they threw that in there, in my opinion. That was weird. Here we get a fully fleshed character and we just see how fully fleshed, I mean, at least, expanded upon. And we see how much of a piece of shit Nelson is. So to the point where you don't care who kills him, you just want him to die. So I don't know why I love this movie so much. I just think that it's something different, and after all of the Godzilla movies we've seen thus far, different works very well for me.
Right. And no, I totally respect that. Like, I'm glad you really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I don't think it's bad. It just
It's not Godzilla.
Too much of a Godzilla. Yeah, it's not Godzilla. That's basically the only thing that makes this not as like I'm hyped up for it as you. That's just
right. But if we remove, but if we judge it by itself without being, it's funny.
Yeah.
I was going to say. Yeah, well, take it away from Godzilla because, of course, at this point, Mothra was not made to be a part of Godzilla. They were not looking to make a Godzilla franchise. Remember, this was before King Kong versus Godzilla. So they weren't, like, as far as Toho knew at this point, they probably, I mean, granted, they may have been planning King Kong versus Godzilla, but not, yes, we'll make Godzilla our flagship character.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by the way, something, I don't know if you noticed this, a lot of actors, not a lot, two, but still that's too many for me, came back and played different characters. Did you notice that or no?
Yeah. No, I didn't actually notice, but
the main pilot from Godzilla Raids Again came back to be one of the main characters here. He wasn't the heavier, funnier
reporter.
Reporter. He was the other guy.
Oh,
Chujo.
Okay, yeah. Right. Now that you say it, you're right. It is the same guy.
Yeah.
That's funny.
He flew the planes, and then do you remember the scientist who basically said Godzilla is crazy? Godzilla is a monster from that guy that appeared both in the original and in Raids Again.
Right.
Do you remember him? He was the editor. He just shaved his mustache.
The paleontologist?
Yeah. Oh, yes, God, he just shaved his mustache. He was the editor.
Right. I thought he looked like, it's funny. I even thought about it. I'm like, gee, he looks familiar. Were you in any of the others that we've already seen? And I'm like, nah, I can't be. And,
it's very interesting. I looked it up, and apparently it's a really big trend in these tokusatsu films to bring these actors back, but as different characters completely. But I would never think of doing that because, granted, I'm not saying that you can't have big-time, like, actors in smaller cinema like tokusatsu, but in my opinion, you would usually, I don't know, maybe I'm just coming at this from an American perspective, you would usually have the same characters just cameo. So you'd always want to bring them back, but as the same characters. Like, it would be very weird if, like, you have Samuel L. Jackson come back as, like, 5 different people and none of them are Nick Fury.
Right.
You see what I mean? Like, that would be weird, right? So, like, it's so, even if you're thinking, but that's that's a big, high-profile. Fine then, right? Just pick a lower, character. Like, it would be weird if, I don't remember her name, but Hawkeye's wife, who, by the way, great voice actress. She's also was Velma in Scooby-Doo in the live action. But yeah, Hawkeye's wife from Age of Ultron. Imagine if she played like 4 other characters that weren't Hawkeye's wife. You'd be like, what the fuck? Like, even something that's small, you're like, what the fuck? So, yeah, it was just so interesting to me when I see these 2 actors, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know you're familiar. And then, like, the editor, it was a little off because he shaved the mustache. But the other guy, I was like, Chujo, I was like, I know you. And it was just really funny to look it up and be like, yes, you do know him. He's been in Godzilla Raids Again, and he's come back for a lot of other Godzilla films.
Right.
So, yeah, it was really funny to me because, look, I'm no stranger to, there being certain actors who constantly appear in tokusatsu. And, yeah, maybe, like, I don't know, I feel like when it comes to television shows, yes, there's some actors that are known to have played more than one tokusatsu character, but usually they're in different universes, even in different shows. So, like, you might have a character be like the quote-unquote Green Ranger in Super Sentai, right, which became Power Rangers America, and then he'll go off and be, someone else in, the Space Sheriff series. So, like, they're both different universes. They're never really going to cross over until they did. They're never really going to cross over. And you're like, okay, cool. But here, because it's, like, a Toho film and it came out right, like, a few years after Godzilla Raids Again, 5, to be fair. But still, enough that I was like, wow, they just brought him back.
Right.
Just someone different.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
I think that's pretty cool.
It's cool, but it's very different, I think. And I realize now, I've seen it in other Japanese films, but not as much as I think it's going to happen as we keep on seeing these films. We're going to go, that guy again, also that guy again.
Right.
Wait, that that guy again. It's going to be very interesting. But anyway, so I've been gushing about the film. So I want to hear, how did you feel about, so yeah, you mentioned you're not the biggest fan of Mothra when compared to Godzilla, but Mothra on her own, do you think it's a good, like, a model design? Do you think it was generally the story that was crafted around her? Did you enjoy it? I do want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the story was interesting in the sense that, it's supposedly an uninhabited island. And we've kind of moved in, because this was 61, I think. Right? When this came in? So we're kind of moving into like, we can talk about, the atomic age, and the atomic testing on islands. I mean, we totally checked and made sure that it was not inhabited in any way before we did the testing on it, so it's fine. There's nobody there. Crash land on the island. What are all these people doing here?
Yeah, it was very interesting. What I liked about something that happened on the island, and I know I feel really weird gushing about how much I hate a character, but something I think that I really enjoyed about what they did with Nelson too, and I also don't think this is like a cultural difference or a difference for the time. When Nelson shoots those islanders, just in cold blood, you're supposed to sit there, regardless of how you feel about the human race, regardless of if you whoever you might be, and be like, yeah, that's fucking terrible. He's just shooting people. So but here's the reason why I enjoy that. I enjoy that because I feel like King Kong, in a way, even though it's not like or even King Kong versus Godzilla, it's not like they directly fucked with the people there directly, but I do feel like there was this idea of like, yeah, those are just shitty islanders, fuck them. Who gives a fuck about them? Maybe not so much in King Kong versus Godzilla, but definitely in King Kong, 1933's King Kong, that we've also done on Friday Night Movies. So it felt like it was kind of like, oh yeah, fuck you. We really don't give a shit about you. We just give a shit about kidnapping whatever's on this island. And also, by the way, kidnapping whatever big thing is on, whatever thing they praise on the island. Yeah, that's a fucked up thing to do. So I'm really happy that Nelson was the one to take them, because if the good guys did, that would have been really awkward.
Yeah. Well, because I like the idea
we
that
wish
they're still looking at them. It's like, oh, but they're tiny and they like communicate with different like sound waves and brain waves, and it's like, yes, but they're still people. Like even if they are vastly different, it's like we need to leave them on their island and not separate them and not do bad things here. It's like we came to establish that yes, there are people on this island. We should probably not test radioactive material in bombs on this island anymore. It's like we thought it was completely, uninhabited to begin with, but now that we've realized that there's people here, holy crap, we need to find a new island.
Yeah, in a way, I feel like it's ahead of its time. And now I say this simply because this, right? I understand Godzilla exists, and it basically did a similar premise. But the reason why I say it's a bit different in its approach is because when you look at Godzilla, it's more so about, oh man, it's about how bad radioactive not even testing, but bombs are. Right? How bad these bombs are and what they can do. But the way Godzilla is represented, it shows off more of a revenge fantasy, a revenge story. Like, the bombs hit me, I strike back. And that's something that I don't want to say is revolutionary. Right? Like, like a monster made of radiation trying to fight back. I don't think it's revolutionary. I feel like that happened a lot in the 50s. Now, of course, it was a message specifically with it because it was Japan, but I don't want to say that was revolutionary in a way. But hear me out. The reason why I say this feels a little ahead of its time is because this is more so very much hippie, right? Like, oh, hey, don't mess with these people. Like, leave them to just live and just be them. And it's like, well, actually, we're not. We're going to kidnap a resource of theirs. Oh, man, well, when you fight nature, nature can fight back. And I know technically it's like, so Matt, it's like Godzilla, but not necessarily because Mothra was looking to reclaim something, right? And then once it was reclaimed, everything went back. The status quo was just fine. Now the people can live on that island and everything's okay, right? You took something away from the environment. All it needed to be was placed back. Everything's okay. With Godzilla, what are you going to do? Hey, man, I can unradiate you. You think I give a fuck?
Yeah.
Like, Godzilla's going to kill you. There's no stop. Like, you can't reason with Godzilla. You can reason with Mothra. Also, the fact that Mothra is a female, which, in my opinion, like, I feel like they were trying to go for this, like, Mother Earth kind of thing, like this Gaia thing.
Right.
So, I don't know. I feel like and the reason why I say it's ahead of its time is because this came out in 1961, but not like deep into the 60s where it's like, hey, man, right? Like it wasn't, I don't think like there was any kind of revolution, the kind of hippie revolution was there yet. It's just 1961, Mothra, Japan, right? So I feel like in a way it does feel a little bit ahead of its time. Maybe not too many years, but it does feel, I guess, different, especially compared to the other Godzilla films. I like its tone. Granted, I love Godzilla fucking some people up and some monsters up, but we're not there yet. Also, when you see the original Godzilla films, when he's fucking things up, there isn't like a woo, it's more of a sense of dread, like, oh, God. Because you also know the connotations. So you're like, ooh.
Right.
Here it's kind of like, hey, like you still feel bad that Mothra's destroying things, but in a way you're still rooting for Mothra to take down Nelson. So you're like, no, Mothra, just go a little bit to the left. Just stop the fire and turn your bug head, just a little insectoid head, just a little bit to the left. Nelson's in that home. You know what you have to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, you see what I'm saying, right? Like it feels like yes, you can kind of, if you're gonna break it down at its core, it's giant monster destroy thing. But when you expand it a little bit, I do enjoy what they're doing here, especially when compared to the original King Kong, which, I mean, if you heard our podcast, you know what problems we had with that movie. And here, I don't feel like there was contempt for the islanders. Like, yes, they were still portrayed as what some people try to refer to as savages, which is a bad term, and we've explained why it's a bad term before. Thankfully, we have Tristan Walter here able to go, hi, fuck no. But... basically. Tristan, what do you think of the term savages? How about fuck no? All right.
No.
Yeah. But I don't feel like there was contempt. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like they made them that way out of spite, hate, or spite or hate. It just feels like obvious ignorance.
I mean,
like, I don't know. For me, maybe I'm wrong here, but it feels like 1933's King Kong, and even 1961's King Kong, or 1964's, I believe it was 64, King Kong versus Godzilla. It didn't feel like it was just out of ignorance. It felt like there was a malicious intent.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I mean, these dark-skinned folk.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel that here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just my positive vibes getting in the way.
No. It's definitely not as bad as it's been in the past. Like, as it's portrayed here.
It's still wrong, but there's different levels of wrong.
Yeah, it still feels kind of odd that it's like, I don't know, that whole idea of like mysticism and the Islanders, summon Mothra to.
Of course.
Summon
Again,
their
it's not
vengeful god to go after. I mean, I don't know. It's not as bad, but it still feels a little bit weird.
Well, yes, of course. In no way am I saying it's right.
Dance ceremony, and I don't know.
Yeah. No,
It's weird. It's weird for me because I don't know how to feel one way or the other about it.
Because you know what you studied, and what you studied is not that at all.
Yeah.
Like what I mean is, from what you've studied, you're like, that's not how it's supposed to be. Especially not potentially not in like 1961.
Yeah, it's just the idea that, I mean, there are plenty of cultures that have, dances within them, and that they do, and it's part of their culture and part of how they are. But just I guess it's like the idea, it's like, oh, how are we going to get them back? How are we going to get, how are we going to get the two girls back and like get our revenge against these people who, stole from our island? Let's dance. I mean, yes, you're summoning Mothra, but I don't know. Granted, it's like, what else are they going to do? Like, I mean, build a boat and go after them, I guess, but I don't know. No,
I understand your point. It doesn't seem like a proper representation, but at this point, because Mothra exists, what really is.
Yeah.
But no, but again, I want to of course agree with you. In no way am I saying it's correct. I'm just saying that it's a good portrayal. I'm just saying that from what we've seen, and again, it's 1933 King Kong sets the bar pretty low.
Yeah,
it's better compared to what we've had. It's step up.
Right.
I'm not saying it's a very large step, but it's a step up.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to mention, I want to say, and again, I really hate having to compare this to King Kong versus Godzilla because, it was supposed to be a great movie from what I've heard, and, I'm not saying that there weren't great parts of it, and there were, but of course there were bad parts of it as well, and some of the worst parts were, I would argue, the effects. Now, I'm not saying anything about tokusatsu 1960s effects. That would make me, I'm sorry, kind of a dick. If I was like, sorry, man, it's not CGI. It's like, you can prefer one to the other, but you can't compare the two. You know what I'm saying? It can't just be like, well, one of them is computers, and then the other one, no computers. So I don't know what to say, man. It's like, well, yeah, you're not going to have computer-generated CGI at this point. But what I wanted to say is that, well, of course, there's a few situations where there's some blue screen freakouts, I would argue. Just like with King Kong versus Godzilla. No, there were, right? But I do think that the effects were better here, or at the very least more imaginative with some of the stuff that they did. Yeah, like making the girls smaller. Right? How do they make them smaller when they're two adult-sized women? They just made the sets around them larger. Of course, green screen when necessary, or blue screen when necessary. But for the most, blue screen or models. Like, they got, like, little tiny dummies. But when they didn't do that, they just made the sets larger. So the shrine that they were standing on, they just made it even larger than them. So to scale, it looks like they're smaller. And I was like, that's actually really cool. So, that also mixed in with, like, when Chujo was getting grabbed by the tentacles, I was like, oh, what movie am I watching? And then I also thought that I was like, where is this headed? Where is this headed? But I don't know, like I really thought that also the backgrounds are very reminiscent of the original King Kong, right? Where that's something I like, where they were painted backgrounds. And I remember we talked about in the original King Kong, to make depth, they put glass over the painted backgrounds to make them look like they're farther away. And I wonder if they replicated that here as well, because they did look really detailed and pretty far. So, I don't know, I really enjoyed some of what they put into this. I enjoyed that it wasn't, even though obviously, yes, it's a King Kong adaptation, it's confirmed by the creators of this film that it's basically a Japanese King Kong. I do feel like I was happy that they got away from the big city as well, and not just focus on either the big city or, you know, the smaller kind of coastal cities in Japan. They just kind of went completely off island. But again, not in a way where it's a direct kind of like an adaptation or a direct replication of King Kong. Because when we had King Kong versus Godzilla, I feel like that was a bit too much.
Yeah.
But I feel like this movie made it enough of its own where you can – I know you felt like it was a King Kong adaptation before I even told you about that. But even though you felt it, it didn't feel like it was too much. Like it was a – like it didn't feel like it was just a full-on rehashing.
Right.
Yeah. Like it feels like its own movie.
Right. I like the idea that it's not stealing, you know, it's not like he was like, oh, we found Mothra, we have to take the egg now, and the Islanders are like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, no, that's our god, you can't take Mothra.
Yeah. I'm very happy that Mothra was not in chains trying to...
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, it's like the Islanders travel to Japan, and it's like, no, you must return Mothra. And then they sing, and Mothra, hatches from the egg, and all hell breaks loose in the city. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm happy. Also, I'm happy that they just went, in some ways, they did a very, I guess, theatrical approach. Like, they went from 0 to 100. And I don't know, for some reason I enjoyed it where, Nelson's like, oh, I'm going to take these two girls. And they're just like, no, you're not. And he's just like, my gun says I will, actually.
My guns say
and
I
they're
will.
Like,
oh.
Well, oh, shit. Yeah. So, and also, I will admit, the one problem I have with this movie, and not the only one, I'm sure, but like a big one, is that it constantly felt like they couldn't prove that Nelson did anything wrong when he did multiple times. If that's the only thing, where it's just like, the motherfucker pulled a gun out on us. Yeah, well, it was in the Amazon, so there's like 20 witnesses. I'm pretty sure we could
the entire
get
crew
the cops?
witnessed him gun these people down. Well, actually, no, they came back afterwards. So they
No. Yeah,
didn't.
it's not that they used the gun. It's that they just pulled it out in the first place. Like, I can't sit back and think in 1960s Japan, at the time that I'm pretty sure guns were banned anyway. I'm pretty sure they were banned at this point, too. In 1960s Japan, you could just, well, actually, he pulled out a gun, but it's fine. Like, maybe they're like, oh, no, but it wasn't in Japan, so it's an international thing, so maybe that's what they want to pull. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, it just feels pretty weird that he could kidnap these things, and they're like, damn, because they're not Japanese citizens, there's not much we can do about them. And it's like, no, but people see that they exist, so unless you're trying to say that, because here's the thing, too, right? I guess I could understand if 1960s anywhere, they're like, no, if they were animals, like, oh, no, they're animals, you can treat them however you want to. Like, even with, like, King Kong or something like that. Like, as long as it's not tearing up the city, it's an animal, it's 1933, what are you going to do? Or 1964, what are you going to do? Right? But these are little, like you said, little tiny, like, people, technically. So, yeah, they might have not have been speaking, but they were like, oh, these are literally, like, miniature people.
Yeah.
I feel like someone would care.
Yeah.
I know suspension of disbelief,
even
but
like the reporters and the other scientists, I mean, hell, the scientist that was in this movie was an actual anthropologist too, which was kind of funny for me. But
oh yeah, I laughed really hard. I was like, when they're like, he's an anthropologist, and he had the newspaper up, I was like, it's gonna be Tristan. It's just gonna be Tristan. God damn it. It's gonna be Tristan's grandpa.
What were you doing in 1960s Japan? Quiet, Matt. No one needs to know.
Kristen, what were you doing in 1960s Japan? You just nonchalantly, what wasn't I doing there, man? Oh, man. Good time. But, yeah.
That's another
But, are you trying to... that's cross promotion. We just did Doctor Who for Doctor Who Wednesdays because we've kind of brought it back for the time being to replace Star Wars Wednesdays because Doctor Who is back on the air, everybody. Another tokusatsu. Anyway, yes, it's considered tokusatsu. Japan considers it tokusatsu. Anyway, I know it's sci-fi because it's not American, but it's British. Anyway, yeah, you know. I don't know, man. I just want to gush about this movie too much. We'll start talking about the negatives. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that, like that plot seeming like it was never really, like they never really tried to frame him, like point at him and be like, that's wrong. I guess eventually they were like, well, they need to be investigated, and then the kid fucked up because if he didn't show up, they would have found them in the lair just fine. But because the kid fucked up, they're like, shit, we gotta leave.
Well, because for the longest time, it was the reporters trying to, like, get him in trouble, and then, they trying to find ways of, like, well, who can we go to, say, like, look, this guy has done this, we need to stop this, these are people, and apparently if what these people are saying is correct, there's going to be a giant fucking moth monster that's going to come and destroy us. But
yeah, the government was basically like, fuck.
Yeah,
because it seemed like the government. What?
I feel like the Japanese, like if they, I don't know, went to the higher ups in the Japanese government, they're like, all right, we've had one too many monsters in Japan recently. Like, let's nip this at the bud.
Well,
but I feel like they have the whole idea of like the other country. It's like, no, we have to protect our citizens' interests even if they're in your country. It's like then it becomes this whole diplomacy debate and yeah.
I would argue that's what it was because Nelson was from fictional country R, right? Which is really funny because I sat back and I'm like, are you trying to say he's from Russia? But then they said they talked about Russia later and I'm like, okay, so he's not from Russia. But then when you saw the set for where he was supposed to be, it looked like Italy. So it was a little interesting.
It felt like to me like it was random European country here or X or R or whatever
Yeah, I guess they don't want to step on anyone's toes because he's literally a fucking dick.
The bad guy.
So you just can't do that. Yeah. What I was gonna say though was yeah, you're right. It basically would have came down to diplomacy. But please remember, Mothra was in its own universe until they brought it into Godzilla's universe. And hell, I don't even know how they bring him into the universe. They might do another King Kong situation, where they might retell Mothra's story. I hope they don't because it's really close to the original Mothra. So like King Kong was in 1933 and it wasn't even released in Japan. It may have been eventually, but. Well, actually, to be fair, King Kong was pretty big in Japan, but in the 20s.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So,
I feel like it was a situation of like, we need something to stop Godzilla. Hey, wait, didn't we have that giant moth monster somewhere in the Pacific? It's like, yeah, maybe we can use that. It's our only, it was like our only hope kind of thing.
Yeah. And also remember, there's been a few different Mothra versus Godzillas, but.
Yeah, that's true too.
Just as a friendly reminder.
I'm just trying to think of like what I remember from different ones that I've seen. Like it's been a while since I've seen them, so I vaguely remember. Like, oh yeah, what was the plot in that?
Yeah, no problem at all. Now, here's the thing too I want to mention. So I saw both versions, right? Because of course on this show we do the original and the dubbed version. We watch them anyway. I don't think this was a bad dub.
No.
No, you know what I think the problem with some of these dubs are, though? It's funny. Some of them, they're not bad. That's why I said some. Some of them aren't bad. But the problem is having to match the flaps and also, I don't know, maybe just the time period. But whatever Americans dub it over, they just all sound very similar. Either it's they all sound similar, so all like, hello, my name is John. Hello, my name is Tom.
Right.
They all sound like that. Or... And I'm sorry to do this this impression, but I have to because that's how they sound. They sound like this because they Asian, and it's like, oh god,
yeah,
oh,
like
right. So they sound one way or the other. Or another one,
right.
which I don't think it's a bad one, but it's definitely one that people pick up on a lot when they do these dubs. They try to sound a lot like this. And I'm not saying that that's a really bad one, but it's one that you pick up on a lot. Where like, man, they go for nasally a lot when they do these dubs. Like, it's not that bad, but it kind of rubs you the wrong way a little bit. Not, in my opinion, not as bad compared to the talking like this and I'm like, ooh, please stop, please fucking stop.
Right.
Now, one thing I want to mention that I found very interesting. For a country that had its borders closed for the longest time, and this is 1960, it's 1964 or 1961, so it's not like, I don't know, it's not like this is the, the 2000s or 2010s or whatever. It's just crazy to me that in this movie they had a lot of English speaking. Right? They had it in King Kong vs. Godzilla too, but that was a few years after. And I thought, oh, wow, there's a lot of that here too. I don't know if I mentioned it on the show when we did it, but seeing this one, I'm like, man, this too, what the hell? Like, did they know that after the first two Godzilla movies that they were doing pretty well in the U.S., so maybe they tried to include that for the Americans? I don't know, because sometimes they do that in anime as well. They actually try to give extra lip flaps, thinking like, the Americans will like this, and the American companies are sitting back actually saying, please stop. We don't need more. It just makes it harder to make lines. Please don't put more in just for us. Please don't. So, I wonder what it's about, because yes, you might say, oh, but the European country, and I guess it made sense when he was leaving, and it did. But I don't know. It just, there was a lot of it. And I'm just curious. Like, I know that in the original scripts they wanted to go to New York at one point, and I think I'm happy they didn't. It wasn't in the budget, but I'm happy they didn't, because that I think would have been too much of, like, King Kong-ness that we didn't need. But yeah, it was just pretty crazy, I think, that it was pretty crazy that, we had a lot of Americans, or at least a lot of English in this film. And I'm kind of sitting here like, it's look, I'm not saying it was the most English I've ever heard in a Japanese film or something like that. It's just usually when I see Japanese shows or films, maybe because some of the shows that I see are also intended for children as well, but they just don't really have the whole English-Japanese subtitle thing. Or if they do have English, it's just like some guy saying, cool, right? Right? Something small, something kind of funny, like, oh, that's silly American, right? But here it was full-on English, or it was Americans speaking Japanese, or at least foreigners speaking Japanese. And I was like, oh, well, shit. So that was interesting to me. I don't know if that caught your eye.
No, I felt it was interesting too. Oh,
of course, if anyone doesn't catch on, we're referring to the Japanese dub having English. It's kind of funny. We do both dubs here. Wasn't it crazy how much English was in the English dub? Right? Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. We should clarify. I also liked the fact that the two fairies, the fact that they had this telekinesis power that they could eventually learn either Japanese or English, whatever language, the dub was in. But they learned the language very quickly. And I think that was also a really cool thing because, I mean, obviously it's, it's movie science, but I think it's still cool how the anthropologist was like, that is some psychokinesis shit. And, even though the movie is older, it's still able to bring those concepts in. And they're concepts that obviously, throughout cinema and throughout television shows, sci-fi ones, have stayed true for a very long time. Just like, oh yeah, person psychic, whatevs. That's not new. So I think that was pretty cool to kind of bring that into it. And say that they're psychically linked, which is just like, please bring us back. Mothra's going to fuck all of you up.
Yeah. And I love that about their characters too, because it was always like, never were they like, oh, Mothra's going to get you guys for stealing us. They're like, no, we kind of legit feel bad because Mothra's going to fuck your shit up. And it's like, could you just, like, please, like, you can't even, like, stop her now. It's like, if even if you brought us back, it's like Mothra's waking up now. You're all gonna die. We're sorry.
Yeah. Also, I was very interested in the fact that I think I mentioned earlier, Mothra being a girl, simply because of the fact that I never thought about the monsters having genders, because I don't know, I just never. They're not humans.
Yeah.
So you don't think of like man,
something...
woman, non-binary. Like you don't think about that when it comes to monsters, right? You're just like they are trying to kill me. I mean, at this moment, I don't care if they can procreate. I'll care later.
Right.
But in this moment, I don't. Yeah.
I mean, if it's 1998 Godzilla, then procreation was a problem because poor Madison.
Right. Let's not talk about that right now for a multitude of reasons. Like I could name you a fuck ton of reasons. Now anyway, I could name you so many. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Nelson's actor was actually he was half Japanese. I think he was also half Russian or half European. So it's actually kind of funny. So when he spoke in English, he wasn't trying. Like he didn't learn it phonetically. He knows English.
Right.
So that was pretty cool.
That's
cool. It was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, because I saw him and I was like, you look like you're half American, or at least not a half non-Japanese, and he was, and I was like, oh, it's actually pretty cool to to see him, and for them to cast someone who. So it felt very much like they wanted this project to be not just a full-on Japanese project, of course, funded by Toho, so it is, but not just a strictly we're in Japan. This monster, like, it does feel like they wanted to go for more of a universal
worldly,
or like a worldly feel to it. Yeah.
Right.
International, if you will. So I think that was cool.
International. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Universal. Well, I mean, they didn't go into space. It's not Mecha Godzilla. Don't know if there's a Mecha Mothra, but I can only assume at this point.
Oh, jeez.
But. Is there not a Mecha Mothra? I feel like there isn't, but something.
No, there isn't. Not that I believe, because I think there's always another Mothra. Like even if Godzilla destroys one, it's like, oh, there was another egg, or the previous Mothra died, but it's okay. She had two baby larvae, and they come back, and one of them becomes Mothra, and it's like, oh god.
Fair enough. One thing I enjoyed about this movie, and I don't know. I enjoyed it. I didn't like it. I didn't like that Mothra came out as larvae because of the fact that it was just too funny, and it took away from, in my opinion, from the seriousness of like all the destruction. Where I don't know why. Just to me, I just see it. I'm like, that's adorable. That's hilarious. I love it so much. Can I have one? So like, I feel like I don't know. I don't think they were trying to make it funny. I think they were just trying to be like, no, it will turn into have a cocoon and then evolve into Mothra. But I feel like just it crawling around really like took away any of the tension that the movie had. So in a way, it's good that they had Nelson, because if they didn't, I would not have been scared. So that's just my take. I don't know if you feel the same way, Tristan, but I feel like just kind of a larva Mothra crawling around just didn't really like freak me out.
Yeah, I mean,
it made me want a plushie of it.
It made me laugh, like seeing the larva like cross the sea to get to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Like that seemed just kind of dopey to me in a way.
Well, no, and that's the thing. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it felt a little off. Only in that respect. Again, once it became Mothra, it was a little
into Mothra, and it's like every time it flaps its wings, it creates a frickin' tornado. It's like, oh, all right, that's a bit more threatening. All right, so what are we gonna do about that?
Yeah, what are we gonna do about the fucking thing that's gonna destroy Japan right now? I thought you said. I know what I had said. Let's just focus on the now.
Or
what
destroy
are we gonna do?
Vague European city here.
Yeah, it was very So Mothra was some scary shit, especially every time they thought they killed it, and it was just like, oh no, it's only getting stronger, children.
Oh yes, that was one point that I wanted to put out. We start to get that idea of these crazy super weapons to fight the giant monsters.
Yes.
I know some people might say that that's silly, and it's like, where are you even getting that from? But it's like, I always looked at it, it's like, yeah, humans got to come up with this crazy shit to combat these monsters, because what else are you going to throw at it? Bullets and tanks and missiles really don't do all that much. So when they let's bring in the atomic heat guns from, this other country, it's like, they're willing to help us in, destroying Mothra, whatever it takes. It's like, oh, I hope they work. It's like, I know you guys, got to throw your biggest things at them, but it's like, it was born from radiation, guys. Why don't you ever seem to remember this when you're like, yes, let's use this weapon? Does it use radiation? Yes. Then why would it work?
Well, wait. Yes, you're right. Technically, Mothra, yes, they tested on there. Yes, technically, Mothra. Radiation seems to be a common factor.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say, something that, is a food for thought, I think, for not just you, but everyone listening. So, okay, so how do I word this? Yes, we are, I'm talking about, us personally, our timeline, right? In our actual timeline, not movie timeline, right? So in our world, right, yes, we are at war with places overseas, but we are not at war, in the homeland. This is coming from two Americans, right? We're not at war here, right? So what happens? Technology doesn't develop bombs to here, or other technology here that would not hurt us but hurt, bad people or whatever you want to refer to it as. No, what happens? We, iPods and all these leisure activities, because for us in America, we are in a time of leisure, right? If there were monsters attacking us on a fucking yearly basis, I can assure you the Steve Jobs of the world would not be, maybe they'd be working on iPads, but iPads with ways of shooting laser beams at other, at monsters in the sky that are trying to kill you. Technology evolves, or is pointed at what the biggest threat is at the time. And there is no threat, in my opinion, currently that is big enough on American soil that would need a bomb here or any kind of war, kind of, I don't say war machine, but a specific, I don't say the word bomb, but just, a weapon here.
Right.
So we get a lot, we get a lot of other kinds of technology that are made more for the consumer to buy. So in my opinion, right, if we had giant monsters in New York or just in the U.S., you can bet your ass our government would be looking at our military budget and would be allocating some funds over to the giant monster, defense force.
And I guess the idea behind it was that it was an atomic-powered heat ray, so it's we're going to set the cocoon on fire, because it's in nature, everything is weak to fire, basically. Even people are weak, can be destroyed with fire, but anything in nature can, one way or another, be destroyed with enough heat. So I guess that's what they were going for with it. But it just always seems odd to me when, the military comes out and it's this thing was born of radiation. Let's throw some more at it. It's all right, radiation's pretty much bad for anything living. But if you go with the idea of giant monster, these giant monsters are, created when they're exposed to radiation, it's why would just hitting them with more necessarily do bad to them? Maybe it'll just make them grow bigger.
Right. One thing that I love though is and it's not your fault. It just happens sometimes when someone says shoot it with a gun. It's weak to bullets. A lot of things are, Tom. I don't think it exclusively is weak to bullets. It's not your fault, but I love when that comes up. Quickly, it's weak to fire. A lot of things are, Jim, but thank you for your contribution. But seriously though, obviously it is. But no, to tie my point together, my point is that as the years go by, right? Not only is it easier to make the movies with I don't say bigger budgets, but different kinds of effects and trying to use these weapons and everything. But yeah, once they actually start tying everything together and make it a giant universe, yeah, it makes sense that the technology starts to get better in the sense that it's adapted. Not so much, oh yes, let's just fire generic bombs. It's okay,
right.
Let's fire these rays at these specific, because yeah, you need to eventually sit back and go, okay, these monsters are a bit of an issue, right? And they're not going away because apparently they just fucking procreate. So we either need to do one of two things. We either need to shoot a fucking giant blue beam at it, or we need to fucking throw Bob Barker at it so he can neuter the fucking things. Because these things, remember Bob Barker, neuter your pets. That's for years. He was like, spay and neuter your pets. So we got to get Bob Barker to neuter these things because they just keep on procreating. But yeah, so that's my main point. My point was we don't have giant monsters in our world, so we don't need technology like that. In theirs, they do, and I have to say, I'm very happy you brought up that point because it was the first time we actually saw something like that. At least you and I have in these films that we've been doing. So I think that was really cool. And now, granted, yes, we had the hydrogen bomb, but of course that was done in a very, a very, very low budget, not so much like the typical sci-fi that you'd have nowadays, or even at the time, or rather a few years later.
You mean the oxygen destroyer, or?
I'm sorry, thank you, the oxygen destroyer. Sorry, my bad, I meant that. Yeah. Yes, the oxygen destroyer from the first Godzilla film. It's like, oh yes, we did have the oxygen destroyer, but it still was done in a way that, I don't want to say it seemed feasible, but nowadays, or even 30 years ago, with the kind of technology they had in these sci-fi films, it was a lot more reliant on these beams and these really weird abstract, machines created to dispense, if you want to use that word, the beams. Where in the oxygen destroyer's case, the oxygen destroyer was made, I don't know, to me it didn't look as, it didn't feel as sci-fi. Obviously the phrase, it removes all the oxygen in the water, is extremely fucking sci-fi. But it isn't as sci-fi as the beams that we saw, the machine that we saw in this film and the machines that we will see in later films. Because I don't remember later films. Yeah. Yes. Well, I don't remember later Godzilla films a lot. Just remembering certain clips here and there. I remember all of the costumes and all of the beams and stuff like that, and how eventually it's we don't just have tanks, we have sci-fi tanks and shit like that.
Right. And it's funny, as much as I kind of bring the idea that it's kind of ridiculous, but, I love that kind of stuff. I love the fact we're getting closer to that because I feel like it's more going for the sci-fi side of it and, going to the fact that it's we have to repel the giant monster, because, like I said, when we watch Godzilla Raids again, it's kind of in that weird in-between position where it was we have two monsters fighting, but we're still trying to get rid of, the first one by, repelling it with, ammunition and bombs. And granted, they were using flares, but, it was still in that weird... Yeah. It's we're not sure how we want to go, what direction we're going to go in this. It's not in the... over the top, really sci-fi, two monsters fighting and, humans doing whatever they can to repel the monster or turning around and using our monster against the giant space monster, but it's also not, like the original film, trying to be just a powerful statement against atomic warfare,
Yes. Also looking at, just briefly, King Kong vs. Godzilla, they tried to go for something that was sci-fi, but still very weird and not so much cannons and beams with King Kong floating with the balloons. Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that now. I feel like you tried to purge it, but here it is again.
I tried to, but you won't let me.
I will not, because that's a beautiful moment in tokusatsu history.
Oh, my God.
It's a beautiful fucking moment, and no one should forget it.
Okay.
Yeah, so is there anything else about the film Mothra? We're going to focus on Mothra, and that's it. Anything else about Mothra that you think may have stood out to you, be it good or bad?
Oh, I will say the two actresses that played obviously the two island women that talked to Mothra telepathically. I did enjoy their performance and their singing within the movie. Granted, chanting Mothra here and there starts to kind of grind on you a little bit, like on the ears. It's like, okay, we get it. You're summoning Mothra. You can stop now, please. But like
you
did enjoy
to
when
like
they actually,
their singing.
Yeah, like I did when they did the actual act. Like, not to say I enjoyed that they were taken from their island and forced to perform, but like for the actresses, I thought their singing was very beautiful.
No, the reason why I'm saying you're supposed to enjoy it is because they were actually a duo that were signed onto the project to help promote their singing career.
Oh, okay, good.
They're
I mean,
singers
I figured that's
first.
like, oh yeah, I definitely got the sense that they were professional musicians. So like that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so it's really funny to think about because it's like, today it would be like two idols. I worry about what happened in the 90s remake. Today it would be two idols, just like Ma'asura, Ma'asura, da-da-da-da. Like it would be very much anime-esque. Mothra sensei. Mothra would be like, oi. Like Mothra would just be a teacher coming in. Just like, hi, genki desu ka, Mothra-san.
Oh, God.
Mothra, I just can't. I have to fucking stop. This is terrible. The point is that, they were actually a singing duo at the time that they actually changed the script a little bit because it wasn't going to be about, like, they were going to actually have more than two of them. They were going to have a tribe of them, like miniature humanoid beings. But then they decided to scrap it when they got the two of them because they were like, fuck it, we'll focus on the two of them. I'm sure maybe they thought about it when it came to budgetary concerns as well, but they were like, fuck it, two of them, and we'll just, we'll cut out the rest. We'll make everyone else larger, I guess, and more, tribesman-esque, and we will focus on their singing career, which really, I think, helped a lot in creating this vibe around the island and around everyone on the island, because if there were just a bunch of tribes, like a bunch of like little mini fairies walking around, and they didn't sing, I mean, maybe they were always going to keep the singing, but I do think that the two of them kind of helped make things, how do you say, I don't know, give a certain feel to to Mothra. Especially because, again, they were going with, female Mothra and Mother Gaia, So having them sing, like, Masura, like, it also, by the way, once we got to the very awkward Christian overtones later.
Yes. Oh, I was gonna make a point about that later, too. That annoyed me. Like, not even a sense of, I'm not against anyone's religion or anything like that, but just the fact that they had to tie in a Christian element to the islanders, god of Mothra or, demigod or whatever you want to call it, they did worship Mothra in some sense. And just having it be like, now, not to say that symbols do not carry similarities between different cultures and different religions. That's obviously symbols can be, you can have the same symbol and have it mean, 300 different things, a million different things between different peoples. But for the time that the movie is made in, and it's just like, do you have to, like, it's like, don't worry, Mothra's not evil. Mothra's a good, a good follower of Christianity, too. It's like, it'll understand. It's like, oh, no. It's like, please stop.
It just makes me think of a bunch of missionaries going, have you guys heard of the word of Jesus Christ? And Mothra's like, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we're sorry for bothering you, Mrs. Mothra. Is there a Mr. Mothra? Excuse me. I don't need a Mr. Mothra. We're very sorry. We're sorry about that. We'll get off the island. May we take these fairies? I will fucking kill you. All right, nice to see you.
All right.
But so anyway, what I think was I thought it was funny because when they for a split second when I saw it, I was just like, wait, is this going to be like is this a prequel to Mothra versus Godzilla where it's like our god can kick your god's ass? Yeah, well our god is Zilla. So how about that?
It's just the cult of Godzilla. It's like, wait a minute, we don't actually worship him. He's destroyed Tokyo on numerous accounts. Like, no.
The cult? Well, maybe we kind of need that. Well, fuck you.
You can leave.
I feel like a cult of Godzilla would accidentally get crushed by Godzilla. Like, they would do that in a very comical fashion. Like, worship the giant lizard. Gets crushed.
Or like they try to follow him back into the ocean and Godzilla just destroys them on the way back.
Basically. Or they just drown. Like, he can walk through the... You can't. Anyway. So, yeah, I was going to say, though, all jokes aside. So, I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying as much attention to the dub, which is probably better for my sanity. But, question, did they not cut out, or at least heavily edit, the very Christian overtones in the dub? Or am I wrong?
I feel
they
like
had to show the symbol, of course.
Yeah. I feel like they pushed it a little bit more in the dub, but like in the Japanese film, it was still there too. Yeah.
No, I thought the Japanese film was pushed harder than the English dub. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, maybe I felt like because for me it's even weirder for it to even be in the Japanese version.
Yeah.
Because it feels like something that you would think would be heavily more of the American side. Yes. That was very. Which actually, wait a minute. I do think. Let me check before I say anything. Well, I mean, granted, I was going to say before I say anything stupid. I always say something stupid, but let me check. This might have actually been a co-production. So I don't want to, because I've been acting as if it wasn't, but frankly, I might be, and am probably wrong. So let me check. I want to make sure that I don't. No, it was produced and distributed by Toho, but I could swear. I could swear an American company was involved at one point. Oh, by the way, something else interesting. The character who was he was the reporter, right? He was I don't know if you may he was the reporter that was a bit more energetic and kind of funny. He was heavier. He was actually a popular comedian.
Oh, that's cool.
Which doesn't that make a lot of sense?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, no,
that was one thing.
Yeah.
His character specifically in the dub versus the original film. They called him the snapping turtle in the Japanese, and then in the English they changed it to the bulldog. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I get it, but all right.
Well, you know why? I loved it for two reasons. One, because it's just harder to dub snapping turtle with the flaps.
I suppose,
And two, well, because like the snapping turtle is very quick, and when they said it in Japanese, but I'm like, oh god, snapping turtle, ooh, that'd be one of the reasons why people would be like, oh man, dubs, live action dubs, oh god. And two, yeah, it didn't give off that same connotation, like just the phrase like he's our snapping turtle, like he's a, he's the bulldog around here, yeah, because he's always biting or whatever. It'd be like, yeah, I don't know, like I know there's some people out there that really hate that stuff because localization. But honestly, like I'm cool with it so long as you're not trying to say that they're in America when there's all these Japanese signs around. Like when you start trying to say like, oh no, they're not in America, like they're not in Japan, they're in America. It's like, okay, this is a bit too much, guys. Right. But I don't know. I'm a big fan of localization. Like I'm cool with it. Like as long as it's like within reason. Right? Like when you're trying to bring something over to an American audience, there are some things that might have to be changed, but it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like an American audience would look at the snapping turtle. Really, that's not like that doesn't sound impressive at all. Like when comparing to a bulldog here, it's like, oh, that
exactly.
That has some more impact behind it, I guess, for an American audience. So yeah, I get it. But
no, I understand. You were just like, wait, what? And I get it, but yeah. One thing I want to mention is that apparently they were actually supposed to kidnap that kid in the original or one of the earlier drafts. And honestly, I thought they were going to go for that. So when they were like, where is he? Oh, he's laying here. I'm like, oh, shit, they fucking killed that kid. And then they show that he's fine. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, they just gagged him and hogtied him and left him under some furniture.
Yeah, but it was so interesting because, I didn't think that they would have done that because they seem like the kind of people who would be like, we're either going to kidnap you or you're going to be dead, kid. And they were supposed to have this whole thing where I think they were going to go to not the same island, but a different island, and there was going to be like a volcano scene. But it even filmed some of the stuff in the volcano or near the volcano. There's production stills of it. But they for some reason, never made the cut. I think because of some other things that they couldn't do with the movie. That they were like, shit, if we can't have certain characters be in New York, then we can't have them be here either or something. So they just they rewrote it to be more Japan Central after the original island stuff. And it's very interesting.
Right.
Apparently, the main characters weren't going to actually witness the birth of the hatching of Mothra, like out of the cocoon. They weren't going to witness that. But apparently, again, it was rewritten and they changed things up so that they did witness it, and that they found him, the boy, tied up in a room. Which is so interesting because, again, I do think they made the right decision instead of trying to make it too convoluted and have them leave the island. I think it's better if they stay or leave Japan, the island. I think that was better. But it definitely didn't seem like the way the villains are portrayed, it did seem weird. They were like, leave the kid. Like, I think they seem like the kind that are like, let's take him and we'll dump the body out in the ocean.
Right. I felt like they were cutthroat enough as villains to do that, but at the same time, like, I don't know if they I guess Nelson did get a call at one point, because I felt like they were still trying to kind of hide behind their embassy and be like, no, we still have the right to do this, and, like, you can't take the girls from us, and blah, blah, blah. So, like, if they added on, like, kidnapping and murder to that, it's like, well, we have no shield to hide behind now, so it's like, yeah. So I feel like they just kind of dumped the kid. It's like, at that point, they're like, we don't need any more complications to this. Just leave him.
Good point. Kind of good point. Because the main character does, even though the main villain, Nelson, does seem smart enough to say, yeah, it'll be too much on us if we take the kid. Just fucking leave him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But and also,
Nelson seems to still have that side that he needs to portray to the public too, so he still has to look good, quote unquote.
But he did change his name and face. Oh, not his face, obviously. He changed his name. Like, they gave him a fake ID, so he was on the run.
When he was trying to get out of Japan. I would argue. Yeah, that's true.
And that was around that time he was trying to get out of Japan. I would argue that what ended up happening was, they obviously gave him a fake name and everything, but it's kind of like, it would just be more complicated. Like, we have to get out of the country. With a kid? Nah, fuck that. It's going to be hard. Let's just leave the kid. So not even like, he doesn't deserve to die. Just like, it's too much time. Let's just fucking leave the kid. What's he gonna tell him? We left. They'll notice when they find the kid.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what else I could really say about this film other than, again, I enjoyed it. There's a few things here and there that I've already mentioned. Oh, not a big fan of this, not a big fan of that. But I do think that the budget was, and granted, only one monster, but I think that the budget was allocated better here than it was in King Kong versus Godzilla, despite what I don't like about, the way, and granted, yes, they technically had two suits because they had two different versions of Mothra, but still, I don't know, just the way this movie was made, I just think it's or the way the budget was used, and I don't think there were too many cringe-worthy budget moments than when I looked at Godzilla versus King Kong. And maybe because they had a licensed King Kong, too, so maybe that took money out of it as well.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, I think they were just a bit too ambitious with that movie, and sadly it showed. And again, there were some moments here where it was like, okay, clearly this is blue screen. But even with the parts that were clearly blue screen, they were usually molded in better than they were in King Kong versus Godzilla. Like, they felt, like, even though we know that there were rewrites and, there were other complications when making this, apparently, this movie was also over budget, but I couldn't tell. I don't know, I didn't feel like they cut scenes out To me, anyway.
Yeah. No, it still felt like a nice flowing movie. Like like I said earlier on, like it was still a good movie, you know.
Yeah. You just have your Godzilla bias, and you also, of course, grew up in the era of 90s Godzilla. Not Zilla himself, but just 90s, Japanese Godzilla. So you got a lot of the movies from the 80s and the 90s when you were growing up. So I know that's where you're coming from. It's a little bit harder. It's a little bit to show you like a standalone Mothra film and try to get you interested. But I'm happy that you were. I'm happy that it got you interested.
Yeah.
Happy that
it was still enjoyable
to
watch. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because it wouldn't have been terrible if it wasn't Godzilla. For you anyway, if it wasn't Godzilla and it was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so unless there's anything you want to say specifically, I think we're just going to wrap things up here.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right, so I want to thank you all for listening in, as always. Been a lot of fun. We're going to keep the trend up. Next week we're trying to do another tokusatsu movie for Friday Night Movies. You might be wondering which one we're going to do. Well, if you're wondering which one we're going to do, check out some of our social media pages on next Friday, right? And if you're wondering, well, Matt, what are your social media pages? For some of you new listeners, or for some of you that immediately when I start promoting us, you shut off the podcast. Why do that? Why do that? You can go over to our Facebook, which is /ThoseGuysOnTheRadio, our Twitter, which is @ThoseGuysRadio, and our Instagram, which is /ThoseGuysOnTheRadio, and find our stuff there. Or you can actually go to our main website, which is tgproductions.net or tgproduction.net, or thoseguysontheradio.tumblr.com. And not only can you find our newer podcasts on there, you can also find, which by the way, our podcasts, if you're wondering, well, where are they specifically located? If you want to go directly to them, well, you can actually search up Those Guys on iTunes and find us through there. You can search up our Blog Talk Radio, which is blogtalkradio.com/ThoseGuysOnTheRadio, or you can search up our YouTube channel, which has our archived podcasts, which is Those Guys on the Radio. So but if you want to, but those are where you can find our direct podcasts. But through our website and our social media accounts, you can also find not just the podcast, but our Let's Plays as well. Yes, we do Let's Plays. We release them on an almost daily basis. Sometimes with a few hiccups here and there, but usually on a daily basis. So you can find those by searching up Those Guys Play on YouTube. Currently, Season 3 has been wrapped up, but it's okay because we don't just do seasons. We also expand on our seasons by continuing the games separately elsewhere. I mean, Tristan and I, we started Dragon Ball Z Budokai in Season 3. It was Season 3, Episode 2, I believe, and we're now continuing that in Those Guys Play Dragon Ball Z, which won't just be Dragon Ball Z Budokai. It'll also be a bunch of other Dragon Ball Z games as well. So we have that going. We also have, so again, search up Those Guys Play on YouTube to find that. And we also have our TG Productions YouTube channel, which will be bringing a lot more stuff to it this upcoming year. Just search up TG Productions on YouTube. And, of course, we have our merchandise, our T-shirts, and a bunch of other cool stuff that you can get over at our website, which I mentioned earlier was tgproduction.net. But go to tgproduction.net/merchandise or thoseguysontheradio.tumblr.com/merchandise to find our merch there. Free shipping, which is also another great plus. And you can go to our eBay, which is /thoseguysradio, to find merch there as well. And go to our Patreon if you want to help fund us, which is TG Production. And on our Patreon, you can basically, depending on what tier you go to, you could actually say to us, hey, I paid this much. We would like you, or, I, specifically, whoever you are, would say, hey, I would like you to do a podcast on anything. It doesn't have to be a podcast about a specific movie. It could be what are your top 5 favorite tokusatsu films, your top 5 favorite giant monster movies, something like that, right? So whatever you might want us to do, depending on what tier you donate to, we can do it. So it doesn't have to just be a Godzilla film or a Mothra or a, Rodan film. Also, right, we can do Let's Plays as well. So you can actually do a mix and match. You can say, hey, I would like you guys to do this specific video or that specific video. So, it doesn't have to be, it can be a specific game. It could be a set of videos depending on how much you do pay. We'll talk in that case. And pretty much any game is on the table, right? So not just podcasts or not just Let's Plays, but we could also give you guys a shout-out on the show as well. You can become a sponsor for the month so that, we can take a certain amount of shows and basically say, hey, we're sponsored by so-and-so. not just for the podcast, but also for the Let's Plays as well. So definitely, go check out our Patreon, which is called TG Production, and, see what you can get there. And by going there and helping us do our thing, you can help us not only get a capture card for our 3DS to bring even more Let's Plays to you guys, we'd also get a capture card for a Wii U or a Nintendo Switch, or even just a small, simple thing of funding our Blog Talk Radio account every month. Start small and try to expand. So thank you guys so much. Thanks to you guys who have already donated to our Patreon, and thanks to any of you who might be looking to donate to in the future. So thank you guys so much. We love you guys. Thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great night. So say good night, Tristan.
Have a good night, everybody.